Hello and welcome to the Tech Lunch Podcast, where we encourage our listeners to learn something new about tech every week. This can range from learning about new and exciting applications to the advancements in coding and technology. If you are always learning, you will always be a step above the rest. Take the time during lunch or during a break to listen and learn, kind of like a lunch and learn, but for the ears. This podcast will open the listeners' ears to new and exciting technologies they may have not been purviewed to in the past. These topics will range from manufacturing technologies to data collection technologies and everything in between. Hello, I'm Nick.
Hello, I'm Ed.
Hey, I'm John.
And, this week we're going to kind of, move around the IT spectrum and then kind of see, where we end up. And one of those things is we're going to kind of, talk about, APIs and what they are and, how they're used and how you use them in your daily life and you don't realize you do. But, first things first, I kind of want to deviate from said, working topic this week to bring up our topic that we talked about last week. Freaking cybersecurity and you. Mm-hmm. Ed, you just did the cybersecurity competition. Tell us about that a little bit.
So in the competition, basically you were is a capture the flag competition, and the way it works is you find some exploit, and then that exploit counts as a point. You're not allowed to do like denial of service attacks, or it really doesn't make sense to do password cracking or anything like that. But basically, maybe it's a web application or something that has a vulnerability as a SQL injection or something like that, mm-hmm. and that is counted as a point. Okay. And fortunately, Trident Tech won that competition this week.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. That's
pretty cool. So how many rounds does that usually go? Does it usually just one round?
It was
or
10 o'clock to about 3.
Okay. Is it
so
one?
It's an hour span, so it's not like rounds. It's like they give you this amount of time, and after that amount of time, they calculate the points, and the amount of points equals the.
Okay, so it's not like if you capture a flag at one point, you can go back and capture it again because they reset.
No, once you capture that flag is gone. You have to capture another one.
Okay.
Another vulnerability or another exploit.
And it's a team.
It's a team
working, not just individuals.
Yeah, 3 people.
Okay.
It's a 3-people team. It was consist of a few technical colleges in South Carolina.
Okay. Sweet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
you always hear about hackathons and things like that, but like you never really. I mean, I only hear about it, and when I'm thinking, I'm just people are just going crazy on the keyboard.
Like we've done a build-a-thon before, but that's about it.
Yeah. In essence, just an introduction to pen testing.
Okay. Yeah. And that leads to the next question. Most people don't know exactly. But what would be that definition of pen testing? Especially since we're ready to talk about APIs.
Yeah.
Pen testing goes pretty much right within a certain path of it, or at least the path of the fact that it's locked down to a certain extent.
So pen testing, depending on what the customer allows or does not allow, and depending on if it's ethical or unethical, it involves basically either testing the perimeters using social engineering, using web applications that are available like Nexus or Hashcat if you're trying to do that type of thing, or maybe as simple as you're just trying to be persistent in someone's network over a certain amount of time to develop some malware that will allow you to escalate privileges to do things inside of that network.
Okay. So it's like offensive versus defensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense. And that leads us to, we wanted to make sure we got that covered because you didn't get to join us last week because of the training and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some mind melt, weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
But, want to make sure that we brought that back up so people can kind of hear, kind of some of the stuff that we're doing, stuff that we're involved in. It's not just, hearing the squeaking in the background, hearing the freaking printers going, or us rambling about something crazy. Yeah. It's, we're actually out there physically getting our hands dirty and, and enjoying this type of...
It's good quality experience.
Right, and living what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're just not like sitting back, watching it. It's like, we start talking about APIs and stuff like that. APIs are one of those things that everybody can use. Anybody who's anybody can actually use the damn things.
I bet you everyone's using them.
Right. It's like, one thing whenever, we decide to build, another website for us, that's something that we're going to probably leverage a little bit is leverage the API scheme. Yeah. Because that's stuff that, you can use to pull in like the weather and pull in different stuff and kind of make it a little bit more enjoyable. Yeah. Out there.
Yeah, so you're talking about pulling things in and connecting things and stuff like that. Like, so when we talk API, I think a lot of people use APIs like probably several times an hour. Yeah. I mean, you're on your phone. Like Apple gives you now a counter for how long you have your screen time. You're probably using an API. Yep. At every point in that, those timelines there. People don't understand that. Those. I am blanking on what the P stands for, but API stands for application. Is it program interface? Yeah, program interface. But yeah, it's how these applications they talk to each other. Because I mean, like if you don't have a way for these applications that probably do drastically different things to communicate, then how are you going to integrate or innovate a system, combine things, processes, and things like that? So, like, we're using it so often that, like, we don't even think about...
Yeah, and if you think about it, the security behind an API is freaking insane. Yeah. You're only allowed to see what that person who developed that application wants you to see. Mm-hmm. You can try to force through it. Good luck. He built you a tunnel. Yeah. And the tunnel is now surrounded by granite. Yeah. Good luck getting out of that. You're stuck. And the fact that most of the time when you do this, when you actually, program to a API interface and stuff like that, you have to have a key that matches what the heck they're talking about. Right. It has to match. You're gonna ask you to let it through. If it does not match, then hey, guess what? Access is denied, and your security check your checksum doesn't. A doesn't equal B, and B doesn't equal C, and now you're stuck on the outside looking in.
I'd say very similar to credentials.
And just to follow up on what Nick's saying is it's an endpoint. So the endpoint would be what you're trying to get to. Yep. Mm-hmm. Then you would have I/O that has to be satisfied. Yeah. That has to happen first. So you have to have the input that is input I/O that agrees with whatever the conditional statements say. Yeah. And then you have to have an API key to verify that you have authority to access. So say if I'm doing something where there's a login and I'm using Gmail or say Google or I'm using Facebook or I'm using some platform to do all of my login over one platform, so I use one, kind of like a locker, not necessarily exactly, but kind of like a locker, and then that's another application. Or maybe we're just using it like NASA does with their web API, where they have a picture of the day from space.
Yeah, so I think that's a good example. Actually, I was going to go to that. Like, I think a lot of people can relate. I think I did it earlier today. We ordered a pizza.
Yeah, order pizza.
Yeah, that pizza pulled up a map and said, "Hey, your pizza's made. It's somewhere in this area." Like, it's using Google Maps API to give me the location and say, "Hey, like, your pizza should be here within the next 5 to 10 minutes because of the location that I have it at here." Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you that pizza joint did not write or send satellites up to have a global positioning system. They are utilizing someone else's, application.
Well, in order to Google.
Google. Yeah.
You don't have like the SS DiGiorno freaking flying across the script there, trying to tell us what,
No. DiGiorno means the pizza's already here. You listen, I have to order out, okay?
Yeah. The SS Google.
I need someone else to make this. You don't want me making the pizza.
I imagine that's an API for where those, the geolocation of those satellites are, say, connecting those points. Mm-hmm. And then Google is using an API from whatever satellite manufacturer or satellite provider API. Yeah. So it's not just a Google API. It's not just a DiGiorno's API. If you're getting it from the grocery store, or Pizza Hut or whoever you use. Yeah. So those APIs are used everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. If you start looking at like the security behind things, and they're just. It's one step. If you think about it, if you use an API to look at, say, the weather, for example, for the Weather Channel, using Weather Channel's API, the only search parameter you can put on there is your zip code. And then it spits out what you want.
And back to what we said, endpoint, input, and then API
Yep.
key.
And then your output
Yeah.
is going to be a JSON file. You take that JSON
Yeah.
file and you
Yeah,
convert it,
reread
unless
it.
you're doing an embed, using embed code. You
Yeah,
know?
it gives you a code that you can that can be read,
Yeah.
outside of that.
And then you can
Specific
really,
application.
mess with the minds of people if they really want to learn it. Is you go to the Python route and you actually build an API using Django.
Yeah.
Using Django. And the thing is then you let people, using the Django web framework,
Yeah.
you can let people call the API in your application.
Yeah, and the sky's really the limit too, because Django. We've talked about it before. I think one of their biggest examples of like, let's say a big website, high-profile website using that is YouTube.
Yep. And also Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, it's those are fantastic examples. Like
Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Yep. Netflix does use
like
it.
you can't. You would be. I would be surprised if I went, a day without someone mentioning one of those.
Yeah.
Just how intertwined everything is now. So it can be a robust system. It doesn't have to be tiny little apps that are like developed locally for very small situations, but can be these big, massive applications.
Well, and the thing is most companies, you can, 95% of their framework runs on an API.
Yeah.
And the only reason for that is, some other companies is because, that's why they call that, is because of the fact that it restricts the amount of data that you can pull.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't overload their systems. You can control how much data is released.
Yeah.
You can control, the rate of ingest, and export that you're getting. Because if you think about it, whenever you write to an API, you're using the get put command. Am I getting information? Am I putting, information there? I'm not deleting anything because I can't.
Yeah, it's like MQTT push pull. Like it's literally am I writing this data to you or giving you this data, or am I taking it from you to interpret however my application can interpret it?
Right.
And what does that mean to me?
And you can also, if you're a developer, you can use SDKs along with those API libraries. Like a place like programmable.web.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the biggest API libraries you can use.
Yeah.
And it's open source.
Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't have to be terribly complicated. Like an example of an API that I've kind of overwritten now. I've gone to Clipper, but a good example of an API and an API key that I needed to kind of set up was with Octoprint in my 3D printer. Is the only way for it to pull any information was that key.
Yeah.
And I needed to I realized that it's not, I could use a global key for several applications. It's the same key, as opposed to I could even set private keys for specific applications.
Well, now
too.
work just got a lot quieter.
Yeah.
He's not too busy looking at his Octo print in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
But
A Clipper, I'll get that up.
But the thing to add to when you're talking about the APIs in that sense, there's an API for yourself, and there's also an API for the thing that you
Inbound
access.
and outbound. Yeah.
Like Bitcoin has an API.
Yep.
So there are things like that.
Things updating in real time when you're looking at it.
And
too.
the cameras you use
Yeah.
that you're using to actually look at your prints when you're trying to verify it's good or not, and you want to use Octopi to have the control remotely. Are also involved.
And it's kind of funny because you bring up the fact that we went away from APIs. However, especially when you go to the Clipper, Moonraker, and Mainsail instance, that could be further from the truth. Because Clipper's the firmware on the printer. We kind of dived back into 3D printers again.
Yeah.
Left turn.
Hard to get by it.
So, we'll do an episode on what is Clipper, probably later.
But
'cause
still working on that.
we start with Clipper, which is the base OS, which is your base firmware. Your base OS is actually Linux. And then, on top of that is Moonraker. Moonraker sits on top of that and exposes your system's APIs from your motherboard. That's Clipper's exposing and Clipper's using. And then your mainsail is sitting on top of that, ingesting those API keys.
Yeah, and you need to make sure that you're, setting up things correctly as well, and
To be able to
in
call
some
those.
of the other, and some of the other
If
config files.
If you actually look in Moonraker's configuration files, Like for me, when setting up MQTT on my printer, for instance, when I'm still working on, I didn't say that the information was good.
Yeah, right.
I said it's available.
Still working on it.
It's there, but it's setting up, making sure that everything is done like a JSON format, and that calls that API string that says, "Hey, guess what? I am doing MQTT. I am sending this topic. I am doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this."
Yeah.
And that's into your conversation.
Yeah.
You know.
And then from there, you just set up a monitoring system.
Right.
So you can automate that.
Right. And that's when you go to like Kibana, or you go to some of these other services out there.
Where you can set it up to where it texts you
which are
whenever you get an
also
issue.
using APIs in the back.
Yeah.
And you do. Because the thing is, if you actually look at Elasticsearch, and you actually look at some of their stuff, it actually tells you how to do it. It is all git put. They're advanced.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. If you actually, when you open up Kibana, you can actually look at like their advanced search features. Their advanced search features will tell you, hey, guess what? This is a git put. You know, this is how you're going to write it, because you're using an API to search their database.
Yeah.
Their front end is an API. It's literally an API.
So you're saying in GitHub, when I pick, or maybe not even in GitHub, let's say I've imaged a fresh Raspberry Pi with like Linux Mint, and when I do Git and I put a URL in there, I'm calling to an API.
You're pulling to an API. You're actually
cloning a repository.
Yep, you're pulling to GitHub SVN.
That's crazy because you're doing that so much.
SVN is a whole lot different than API. So that's very hard. It's one and the same. However, it's very, very hard to differentiate between the two.
Okay.
Because SVN is your Git repository. It's, I can't remember. For the life of me, I can't remember what SVN stands for. However, maybe Ed, you can look that up for me if you could. SVN is pretty much, I think it's Subversion. I think it is the acronym. But what it does, it makes sure it's versioning control.
Okay.
And when you're calling that, or you're doing a curl or a git or a put or whatever to the GitHub, and you're pulling that clone, you're making a copy of said repository. On the other hand, you're bringing it in, and then after that's all set up, then it's kind of like an API, because when you make changes, you put the changes to it. Yeah. So it's kind of one and the same, but kind of different at the same time.
Okay. So,
makes sense, but it's
yeah.
SVN is a totally different bag animals when you're dealing with that. But the thing is the security is one and the same.
Yeah.
Because I can't like download your repository that updates somebody else's.
Yeah, so that's
unless I accidentally push it to it.
Yeah, download is probably going to be the easiest, but pushing to somebody else's unless they open it up via an API key. Yeah, you're not getting in.
Mind you, I've accidentally updated the wrong folder in the GitHub repository before. That was a whole different bag.
Like Subversion would be SVN.
Yeah.
And it's like that is, setting up an SVN server or SVN cloud outside of GitHub is a little bit more interesting. But that's when I just tell people, use GitHub.
Yeah, I'm just curious because whenever I was doing a lot of this troubleshooting before I got Clipper working, like how they tell you, hey, we recommend these settings. And by the way, guys, when someone's walking you through an instruction manual and it's their product and they say recommended, follow those first. It's going to work that way, and then you can kind of take and do some variations on it. Don't just try to vary and do some variations before you know how it even works. Don't be like me. I tried it on a few different machines and I didn't get it to work, but the Raspberry Pi worked perfectly. But yeah, no, you should see what these things are calling to, and you should see kind of how they're behaving, and that's when you know. Like there are certain tools and commands like that you can look up. I think I was doing it today to try to figure out why some ports were not communicating, only to find out they are communicating and they're completely open. The application's not sending any data. That's why nothing's happening. Yep. So
and most of the time to check your APIs is you copy and paste them into a web browser.
Yeah.
You get the enter key and it spits back the JSON file that you're looking for.
Or it gives you like
it says
GUI
deny.
interface. Yeah, exactly.
Now if you're using the Django interface that you created on your own, it's all up to you. But most of the time it's going to be territory. Most of the time it's going to be the same because APIs are standard across the board. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
We understand this. However,
If it is set up to a different fashion where it requires an admin login on one end, then it brings you to an administration console and you set up your Git polls from there.
Yeah.
So
Force you to use pseudo passwords and whatnot.
yeah, most of your database systems, or a system that has a database on the back end of it, is going to be API controlled because they don't want you to go all willy nilly through the database.
Yeah.
And I will say this, so we did say that APIs are secure, but APIs are as secure as the person that's configuring that API interface.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means if you do not use exception handling, if you do not handle user input, if you do not do simple things like do not use this type of configuration where I can do a SQL injection from a user input to basically get access to a database where I can exploit said database, take data from said database, and leverage said database against that database.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and don't be the guy that left the password the same admin.
Yeah,
That's also like
seen that.
Yeah.
You can't blame the API for that.
You can't
blame for also using real text passwords.
Yeah.
And real text logins. I couldn't tell you how many times you go to a company and guess what, everything's in real text. And you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna give up now because it's not even worth it at this point.
Yeah.
And shame on there because you should use fuzzing or something like that.
Yeah.
Or come up with some type of dynamic checking to verify what credentials are being used in your company.
And I saw something like not too long ago. I can't remember where I found it out. If I do find it, I'll put it on like Facebook or Twitter or something like that. But it's like an SSO, and it's like a key cloak, which would I use on a daily basis at this point, to actually secure the API keys. Where you'd put in some key cloak, you'd auto-generate that API key, it'd spit out the API key, you give them the API key, and they can log in. However, when their access is denied, you disable that, and it disables the API key, which then it makes it where because that API key, what it does, especially in that system, which is why I like it, is it checks the API key as an LDAP server. Verifies it's still valid. If it says returns valid, it returns the string request information. However, if that key is invalid, meaning the person left a company or did something else, guess what? Now it says invalid. I'm not returning you anything. Which
but it keeps that record.
Right. So it's like an LDAP. And the thing is what that is. If you ever go back and you look at like the CISSP Bank of Knowledge, that's your access control information, your IAM, and that type of stuff is stuff that if you can get right. You figure out as your 95% of your problems because you're removing people's access as soon as they leave the company. You're not playing games waiting for somebody to leave.
Or giving a countdown timer or something.
Right.
And to add on to that there's a very important part to what you just said. Most attacks are not because the system has a vulnerability. Most attacks are because of humans.
Yeah.
Configuration errors. Did not patch. Or it's because someone didn't offboard correctly and you left information that could be used for onboard. You can be used for social engineering. So as important as onboarding is, offboarding is even more important because I can do everything you said, and if I leave that residual information there, whether it's an email address that has not been purged from your system, then if I'm an attacker, I have a name that I can give to somebody that does not know that this person is not here. Because if your offboarding system does not tell the person they're only human, now I can get that person credentials, and it doesn't matter what you did with the other system because now I have access directly.
Yep.
And then if you can elevate to an admin type user, like that's my system, not yours.
Or be persistent. I can be persistent.
Yeah.
If I'm persistent, then it's not that I want to exploit your system to shut it down. Now, it's that I want to use the information later to leverage against that system so that I can use that information to gain.
Yeah. And the thing is like, we talked about last week, the whole thing about, SSOs and key cloaks and stuff like that. It's understanding what single sign-on is. It's like, if you give me an account, say I need this user have an account, and then they leave the company, deactivate the account. You know, disable the email address, disable the stuff you need. But also, the person who's handling your SSO server, let them know that the person left.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Or
please send them an email. Let them know.
Probably a good idea.
Or connect your systems.
Yeah.
HR goes through a process. Legal goes through a process. IT goes through a process. Take the human aspect out of it. As soon as it says stamp, this person is out of the system, you should have an automated system that sends to every broadcast. This person is gone.
Yep.
And then you should have a procedure in place that says no matter if the guy is an expert or a beginner, there should be a process in place or a few clicks that can happen, or for God's sakes, write a script.
Yeah. Or something that just, you know, if not, you know, at least, you know, send an email, hey, do me a favor, disable this account for a little bit until we've gone through the legal matters to make sure this person is removed from the company.
Yeah, if they have to
That's
hold your
fine.
data.
You know, if they have to do a legal hold.
Makes sense.
You know, just, you know, let somebody know that, hey, guess what? This person left. Can you please disable their stuff? Don't delete it. Just disable it. Just turn it off. Turn off the access.
Right.
So no one can get in on the backside. You know, I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen it where people go, oh, no, that person left like 6 months ago. Okay, cool. When are you ready to tell me?
Then why do they have accounts?
You know, why is your account still active? You know, it's not being used.
That's funny.
But it's still here.
And just to
God
bring,
forbid it's being used.
just to put it in perspective, Nick, you're not gonna be. It's not gonna be attacked like War Games.
Oh no, never.
It's like the movie War Games.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be attacked like the movie's Hacker.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like the Matrix where code is screening. It's gonna be somebody calling somebody, going to some place, finding a uniform, putting that uniform on, saying that they are HVA person, going to your HVA system, finding a vulnerability in that system, taking that system to leverage into your other system that you did not have any inkling that these two systems were connected,
Right.
and then they're gonna penetrate your system that way. Ask Target.
Yeah.
That's how Target was compromised.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that, you know, we have these multi-billion-dollar companies that are getting beaten back by Urkel. You know, it's one of those things. You know, and hopefully, you know,
leave yourself open. I mean,
right. I don't know if John understood that
oh,
reference.
Steve Urkel.
You know, just making sure, we weren't, you know, barking up the wrong tree
or
here.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, or Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah.
That's a good one. I know these. I know these references.
However, ask him if you've seen some other ones, and he'll tell you flat out, no.
Not all of them, man. Not all of them.
You know, I'm still trying to make sure he saw Down Periscope and Monty Python.
Oh yeah,
Monty
Classic.
Python, yes.
classic.
He still has not seen Down Periscope though.
But it's classic.
Oh yeah. But we're getting off topic again. Happens, left turns, you know. But you know, again, that's what kind of makes this whole entire podcast thing fun. You know, we can left turn off of that and you know, catch you on the back straightaway someplace.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'm curious.
Oh.
What is the very first like API that you guys heard of? Like when I could think of mine, and it revolves around when I was younger. I was playing video games.
So you're gonna be, even Nick's probably gonna be surprised.
Okay, what's up?
Go back to the 1940 to about 1960. It's where the concept of an API was first developed.
Okay, what were they doing really?
So basically,
How did that work?
Yeah.
so hold on, because I can't just say it
So
without
we had
giving
a
you a
steam.
reference. So you guys can
follow.
follow. Nick can go ahead and follow up, so I can.
I can start to get.
I'm actually kind of curious about this because I want to make sure.
You're gonna be pleasantly surprised when I.
I just mean, do you still have your login to that account or?
No, I don't. But so unfortunately for me, I come from the OT side,
the archives.
and I've heard the word API, but for me, I have to do research. And with my research, these are things that I check on, and with a little bit of research, and Nick can give his, so I can gather the research.
Well, here, no,
So we don't have to
I'll
wait.
go ahead and start, so I can be like, this is. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's pretty recent. It's like past 10 to 15 years.
You back?
No, you're wrong.
No. That's when I first.
Okay, so
Yeah, I'm not.
APIs
Listen, I'm not 1,000
originated,
years
or the
old.
concept of APIs originated in 1940
Yeah.
to about 1960s, and it was the concept. Now, mind you, I'm saying the concept. The concept was basically it was Maurice Wilkes and David Wheeler and it was EDSAC.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it was early computers for EDSAC.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the concept. So the ideal of what APIs do, these guys wrote a book about it.
Well, it didn't.
And then it became what we think of it later.
Then they become was it Dell or HP? I know they merged into a different company.
These guys basically were British. The guys I'm talking about, but they just came up with the concept.
Yeah.
It was far as how we do the structure of API, that came later.
Yeah.
But just the concept of what an API
And of course,
is.
every year they improve and streamline, right?
Yeah, so basically, so that was their original concept for API.
So just like a little small diagram. There's only like 5 points on this.
Yeah. But what we know it today came later. As far as web applications, embedded software.
And it makes sense
that developed later.
Yeah, because, of course, embedding, when that started becoming a thing, like you're starting to see applications inside of other, websites and things like that.
So, like I said, I'll read a little bit more. Unfortunately, I hate to be this way because I'm not an expert.
That's fine.
I just do.
Well, I was just asking. I was just asking
stuff.
your first time using it, not like
so
the first time it was ever used.
My first time using it was in this
1940.
application.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Okay. So same time.
So the term.
He was around with the same time this book came out.
So the term basically
it
describes an internal interface
Yeah.
for end users facing programs known as application programs.
Yeah.
That was the initial
the same idea
thing for APIs. Yeah. And then, like I said, what we know of today, from the OT side, I have not directly had I'm working towards that.
And had a body experience playing with one?
Like a use for...
So I have not had a, what we say, bare bones experience with APIs.
Yeah, okay.
I know that we use APIs every day with applications we use on our mobile phones, with web applications, with microservices and things that we use. I know that happens.
Yeah.
But far as if you're asking me, have I done APIs? No, because at this point I'm only at a
Padawan?
Not even Padawan. I'm still at a new far as programming, so I'm still learning some platforms like Python, a little JavaScript, some Java.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning the basics.
I wasn't even talking about making one or doing, I'm thinking about using even an application that uses an API.
Well, if I'm using it, then we say Google Maps.
Google Maps
so
uses
in
them
the
all the
section
time.
of Google Maps. But, so I was thinking about it. I didn't even realize.
AWS, Azure, name it. Any SaaS product right now is leveraging an API in some way.
Which is funny because if you think about it, I'll let you finish because you realize you've used APIs a long time ago.
Yeah, no, because the more and more we talk about it, the more I realize.
You know who I think? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you go ahead.
AOL.
YIM.
YIM?
Yahoo Instant Messenger was all API based.
But I thought AOL was before Yahoo.
At the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yahoo was like the first mainstream
I remember the little guy holding the smiley face.
Yeah, I'm online.
But I can tell you,
oh my god!
But their first downloadable application that started as an exe that loaded onto your PC was YIM or Yahoo Instant Messenger.
Okay.
From that, it tied in from your Yahoo login account via API back to their servers to let them know you were online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Because the thing is, the only API key that you have that knows when you're online is when you shake your mouse. Says, "Hey, I'm awake."
Yeah.
You know, look at the stuff that we try to spoof now when everybody's trying to be lazy at work.
However, I will say this:
it's called a VBS script.
even though we are all online aware now, there is no more iconic thing than online than AOL.
Nope.
Yeah.
The sound when you logged on. I mean, even today.
I can still hear it. Yeah. I can still hear it.
Yeah.
See, and I didn't even realize.
Would be offline with AOL if somebody answered the phone.
I wasn't. Yeah, that's true. I wasn't even thinking about it like that far back because I definitely in those like the beginning of chat rooms and stuff like that. Yeah.
IRCs and
I was thinking.
IRC is almost IRC or IRC is almost 100% API based.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I was thinking
for an application that's open source.
Now my idea feels like it's very modern. What I was thinking about the use of APIs, I was thinking the video game industry has been like growing in the sense that like I can make a video game with APIs using your, like, maybe your engine, for your physics engine. Maybe I don't want to or I don't have a big enough team to write the physics engine. I can use APIs that call back to your engine, and then I have my, let's say, artists or whomever making the things look pretty, but like the physics is someone else that has made it, and that's why Unreal Engine is used by so many people. They're using a whole bunch of APIs.
It's a standard.
Yeah, there's a reason it's a standard.
Doom is one of the games that never finishes.
Nope.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna blow your mind now. We talked Octoprint, so we're back on 3D printing.
Yep.
Back around circle again.
There is an online service
really
called AstroPrint
Okay.
that works with 3D printer forms.
So you mean like
it is web based? It is a web based service.
What's it doing though?
If you want to set up a 3D printing farm,
you said farm. Okay,
farm,
yeah.
All right.
So like several printers connected at once.
Yeah.
web based.
Well, I mean, you can. There's another one that's Octo Farm like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same idea using your APIs. You have an API for your, let's say, your webcams.
Yeah.
You have an API for like all of your maybe MQTT and things like that, and you can get them all even more so connected with another API to a centralized.
Right.
So all of them report back to the one. And that
Yeah, you just have to have the little touch thingy, and
that's the goal.
Yeah.
And it runs off all.
Oh, and the processing power to do
Well,
all
the
that.
thing is like I'm looking at their website right now.
Yeah.
And it's running off of Raspberry Pi, and no looky there.
Is it Pi Zero?
Nope, it's Octoprint.
Oh yeah, of course.
So plug into Octoprint.
Of course. Hard to get away from it.
Yeah. However, the good thing is Octoprint or Octopi or whatever the heck you're using, can be tied to Clipper. There you go back to the actual firmware that makes sense, because you can control so much about the API use of your motherboard. Now you're calling motherboard pieces, that are API calls. You're calling motors and drives that are API based.
Just to like make a lot of sense. The Clipper and Mainsail, it's the reason they use that Raspberry Pi is that motherboard that comes on the printer is just not powerful enough.
Nope.
To run all of the things. And if I think of tomorrow, I got a sensor I want to add here to check the temperature of this corner. I can write that in my code, or my config file on Mainsail, and the APIs send it to it, and I just hit it restart. It restarts in a couple seconds.
As long as you have the pin number.
Yeah. Okay. That was what took me.
I think it's like
way too long.
You can think it's like an API / controls logic type of interface, because it requires your I/O and I/O locations of your pins.
Yeah.
And then it's from there. It's controlled by the actual software on top of that.
Yeah.
See, that's where it's two phases to there. That's where I'm not saying it's simple, but I'm from the hardware side. So from the hardware side, far as a pin out for any processor, any chip, any logic that we're using, that's available.
Yeah.
I mean, readily available. Really easy to do.
Yeah.
But the SDK is where you can start to get into to control the firmware.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take Mainsail. It doesn't take any of those.
Right.
If on the firmware level, I can have Mainsail on top.
Mainsail.
I can have Clipper on top.
Yeah.
So that top layer, that layer that communicates with the web application, because we're not communicating at the firmware level.
Yeah.
At the firmware level, that is hardware specific.
I think we're dealing with Moonraker.
Yeah.
Moonraker is going to be your
I was
API
gonna
generation.
say-
So
So
like I'm
Clipper-
saying in the chip itself.
Yeah.
When I say hardware specific, not the board.
Yeah.
I'm saying like when I use the microcontroller or the microprocessor, if I'm using a microprocessor, then I'm using some instructions, and those instructions are more likely going to be assembly based.
Yeah.
If I'm doing things in a microcontroller, it's going to be more like Linux, and then you're going to be doing some commands in some type of Linux platform.
So what I was gonna say is mainsail and Clipper is the OS.
Yeah.
It's Linux.
Yeah.
Moonraker is what actually exposes all of your APIs for you to be able to consume.
When you're imaging
which
the Pi,
is on top of what we would say.
It's in between your Clipper and your mainsail instance.
Right. So like the microcontroller has a set of instructions, and they are once again assembly.
Yep.
On top of this, so you got machine language, if you want to say.
Yeah.
Above that, then you have, like you say, it would be the OS, or it would be the programming language we're using to access it. But more likely, it's going to be a platform like Linux.
Yeah.
And Linux is going to use some commands, which could be like bytecode if you're using certain systems. It's like Java using bytecode.
True.
But I'm saying, like, if you really want total control over that hardware, then to interface with the thing that gives you the flexibility, like Clipper or Moonraker or whatever you're using, then you want to control that hardware interface, the interrupts and so forth, at that level.
And it's like, not to completely, left turn us, it could, but like, for example, since we're talking about APIs and stuff like that, Moonraker also allows the firmware from Clipper and Mainsail and all that to actually talk to a CAN bus interface, as long as your board can understand CAN bus, which is 100% API based to a certain extent because it's serial.
Which is born from the automotive industry.
Right, is born from say the CAN bus still runs in 95% of your older vehicles. If you think about it, what is it? The old Saabs? Saab are 100% CAN bus. 100% of them are CAN bus.
There is not a vehicle right now that's not using that type of technology.
Right, exactly.
As far as communication protocol, that's the protocol.
And the thing is, you can take a printer, you can go from a 5-wire to a 2-wire, and reduce your wiring amount by a quarter, and then now you have more API control of what exactly your hottie does.
Well, I'll retract that, Nick. There are some cars that have been manufactured that are not CAN based. They are mechanical cars.
Yeah.
They are like cars from the 60s or
cars.
They're muscle cars.
They do not have that type of interface.
Yeah, those are muscle cars.
They don't have fancy Wi-Fi and things like that, or high-powered entertainment.
Pretty much when cars used to be
push
cars.
to start.
Yeah.
Crank to start.
And funny enough, just a funny story on push to start. So most of these cars have a fob, right? And some of the more expensive cars have a charging bay, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not a good idea to put your fob on the charging bay because of induction charging. It fries it. And once you fry that, and say you're using Navstar, you have to meet the conditions that thing has to communicate with the car, or it will not start.
Yeah.
So technology is great, but technology that does not do exception handling is bad.
That's why my favorite
or poor user control. If you don't know how it works.
If I'm not a phone, I do not charge.
It's like, it says something my favorite vehicle of all time is a 1970 Chevelle SS, with a 4-speed and all of that. Because I like the older cars, the cars that make sense. It's like your old C1, C2 Corvettes. Okay, cool. It's, you can say it's advanced for its time. The darn thing didn't even have power steering. All right. Oh, it was fuel injected poorly.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Your C2 Corvettes, your Fuelies. Yeah. You can say those things are great cars because they are. However, they're poorly. It's a poor system. However, they're worth millions of dollars. So sure, let's buy one.
A lot of people don't understand how much power steering helps.
Yeah.
Dear God, you need that.
But I think we've kind of left turn this more than. Than we like, but we stayed on course.
Long story short, APIs.
Yeah, we're bouncing between the lanes of the bumpers because we're out here bowling.
APIs, you're probably using them sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. It's like keep using that. Keep playing with it. Keep playing with it. Download freaking Python. Play with the Django.
Yeah.
Build your own API.
Yeah.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's when we really get to have some fun. I've done that. I think everybody around here might have tried it at least once just to get an idea behind what the heck it is. If John hasn't done it, we're gonna try it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I fail a lot of tests, but It's okay as long as I get one successful.
The thing is, it's, if you keep breaking it over and over again, eventually it'll work.
Well, then you figure out how things work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But, it is what it is. But, I just want to say thank you, everybody that, we see, listening in, even when we have some quality issues. We highly, thank you. We couldn't do this without y'all. And, we're glad we can give you this type of, information. We got some bigger and better things coming, that we'll be announcing soon. Maybe some ebooks coming down the pipe, for y'all. Stuff that y'all can, go out and listen, watch, and, who knows, we might eventually do what is that, an ebook? The voiceover book, the audio book. Yeah, that thingy. I had it on tip of my tongue someplace. So, maybe one of these days we'll make one of those and you can listen to us rant for a couple days. Yeah. So we promise it will be a little more interesting in these conversations. Maybe not.
Yes, it's going to read the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to read exactly the same. So, we thank you. I thank you. One of these days we'll all have to get together and, talk about randomness in person. So, but with that, I turn it over to the guys, and y'all have a good one, and we'll catch you around the bend.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I appreciate you guys listening. Sorry I missed you last week, but I was attending a competition for a penetration test competition between technical colleges. But we do appreciate you guys tuning in. I will challenge you guys a little bit. Give us some ideas or maybe some suggestions of some things that you would like to talk about, or if you guys are interested if we're doing a live session, maybe we could do a live session with questions and answers. And
here's the funny part: you and me started this 45 episodes ago. Me and Ed just tinkering. We're only 60 downloads away from 1,000 all-time downloads.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's crazy to hear. It's kind of eye-opening how many people, are even interested in kind of the nerd stuff we talk about. Because I can guarantee you that I talk about this with some of my family, and you can see their eyes kind of glaze over. But they don't understand how exciting it can get when you finally get something to communicate correctly, and you can get something to automate, and you hit one button and it does the process you want. Opens your door, turns this on, sets that temperature, whatever the case may be. It's satisfying to get something to do that, because what were they doing prior? Like everything was manual. So there's so many more possibilities of what you can get done and projects you can start just because of basically either APIs or some other type of technology. For me, like one of my projects was making like a type of a mirror, like a smart mirror, which I know that is an actual thing, but I bet you I can make a smart mirror that's cheaper than these $900, $1,000+ smart mirrors that they're selling you, with a Raspberry Pi, some APIs, and a mirror.
And if you're using APIs, you might not even have to have the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Right.
You may be able to go as far as a Pico.
Yeah.
A Pico with Wi-Fi interface that can access an API, and then you just send some commands.
It's got an HDMI out.
So that's just one of the things where it's like your creativity is what's going to limit you. So like with all these things we talk about in all of our episodes, we combine and we use them every day. We use all of these skills every day, and we kind of urge you guys to see where you could use them in your daily life. How can you make your day better? So just like these guys, I echo the same thing. Thank you for listening. It's been a great to see the people, downloads kind of coming through and people listening, because you don't even expect anyone to listen at all. So
it's
greatly
fun to
appreciate
look
it.
at the listener map.
Yeah, it's
really
it's a nice feeling too. So I feel the same way as these guys. I appreciate it, and I don't have much else, but I do. If you guys have any topics that you'd like us to kind of touch on, I'd be happy, very interested in learning anything cool. So just give us a shout, and we appreciate it.
Help us to 1,000. Leave some comments.
Yeah.
We'll get to y'all later, and hopefully we'll be able to do something special if we get to that point.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. You have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
All right, the boss house. All right.
Thank you for listening to the Tech at Lunch podcast, where we hope you learned something about tech during your break or during your lunchtime. If you did, please give us a follow to prevent missing future episodes. If you have any ideas or something you want to hear or learn about, please send us a show idea to podcast@vulcanara.com. Hope you have a good rest of the day and continue learning.